They told me I was having a breakdown. That at 72, jumping out of an airplane alone was a cry for help. My own children begged me to stop. Neighbors whispered. Strangers stared. But 3 hours ago, I stood at the open door of a plane at 13,000 feet, looked down at the world below, and made a choice that changed everything. This isn't about adrenaline. It's not about proving anything to anyone else. This is about what happens when you wake up one day and realize you've become invisible in your own life. When the person you used to be has been buried under years of being someone's wife, someone's mother, someone's responsibility. And when that all disappears, when you're suddenly alone with nothing but silence and time, you have to ask yourself a terrifying question: who am I when nobody's watching? Most people my age are told to slow down. Be careful. Stay safe. But what if safe is the most dangerous thing you can be? What if playing it safe means you never find out what you're actually capable of? What if the scariest thing isn't falling from the sky, it's never taking off in the first place? So what pushed me to do this? What happened that made me choose fear over safety? And why did I have to do it completely alone, with no one strapped to my back, no safety net, just me and the sky? Before I answer that, you need to understand where this really began. Not in an airplane, but in an empty house, 3 years ago, holding a letter from a dead man who knew me better than I knew myself. They told me I was crazy. My children, my neighbors, even the woman at the grocery store who somehow heard about my plan. At your age, they said. What are you trying to prove? But here's what they don't understand. I wasn't trying to prove anything to them. I was trying to prove something to myself. That I'm still here. That I'm still alive. And 3 hours ago, at 72 years old, I jumped out of an airplane at 13,000 feet, completely alone, and I've never felt more terrified or more free in my entire life. My name is Eleanor, and for most of my life, I've been someone's something. Richard's wife. Emma and Thomas's mother. The reliable one. The careful one. The woman who always made sure everyone else was taken care of before she even thought about herself. And I was happy with that. I really was. Until 3 years ago, when Richard died, and suddenly I wasn't anyone's anything anymore. I was just alone. And that's when I realized something that scared me more than any airplane ever could. I had no idea who I was without everyone else. The house feels different when you're the only heartbeat in it. Every morning, I wake up to silence. Not the peaceful kind. The heavy kind. The kind that presses against your chest and makes you wonder if anyone would even notice if you just stopped trying. I used to wake up to Richard humming in the kitchen, burning toast the way he always did, too stubborn to admit he could never get the timing right. Now I wake up to nothing. Just the clock on the wall, ticking, reminding me that time keeps moving whether I do or not. My children call me every Sunday. Like clockwork. How are you, Mom? Emma asks, but I can hear it in her voice. She's asking if I'm still functional. Still safe. Still the version of me that doesn't cause problems. Thomas is worse. He talks to me like I'm a child. Did you take your pills? Are you eating enough? Maybe you should move closer to us. Closer to them means further from myself. It means a smaller apartment, fewer choices, more people checking in to make sure I haven't done anything reckless. Like live. I tried to tell them I was fine. That I was managing. But the truth is, I wasn't. I was disappearing. A little more every day. I'd go to the market and realize I hadn't spoken to anyone in 3 days. I'd sit in Richard's chair, the one by the window, and I'd wait. For what? I didn't know. Maybe for permission to feel something again. Maybe for a reason to get up tomorrow. I started to understand why some people just give up. Not because they want to die. But because living started to feel like too much work. Then one afternoon, I was going through Richard's things. I'd been avoiding it for 3 years, but the closet was full, and I knew I couldn't keep pretending he was coming back. I found his jacket, the brown leather one he wore on our first road trip together. I put my hands in the pockets, and that's when I felt it. A piece of paper, folded small, worn at the edges like he'd carried it for a long time. My hands were shaking when I opened it. It was a letter. To me. In his handwriting, the messy scrawl I used to tease him about. Eleanor, it said. If you're reading this, I'm gone, and you're probably sitting in that chair by the window, pretending you're okay. I know you. You're going to try to be strong for everyone else, and you're going to forget about yourself. Don't do that. Don't let them turn you into a memory. You've spent 50 years taking care of everyone. Now it's your turn. Do something that scares you. Something just for you. I don't care what it is. Climb a mountain. Learn to paint. Hell, jump out of an airplane if you want. Just don't let this be the end. Promise me. Live big. I love you. Always. Richard. I read it 5 times. Then I cried so hard I thought I might break. Not because I was sad. Because I was angry. Angry that he was right. Angry that I'd been sitting in that chair, waiting for nothing, wasting the time I had left. Angry that I'd let everyone else decide what my life should look like. And angry that it took a letter from a dead man to remind me I was still breathing. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what Richard said. Something that scares you. I thought about all the things I'd wanted to do and never did. Places I wanted to see. Things I wanted to try. And then I remembered something. Years ago, before the kids, before the mortgage, before life got so damn serious, Richard and I were watching a movie. Some action thing with explosions and stunts. There was a scene where someone jumped out of a plane, and I said, half joking, I'd love to do that someday. Richard laughed and said, then let's do it. But we never did. There was always something else. Always a reason to wait. And now he was gone, and I was still here, still waiting. I grabbed my laptop. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely type. I searched for skydiving near me. Page after page of smiling people in jumpsuits, falling through the sky, looking like they'd found the answer to a question I didn't even know I was asking. I read reviews. Watched videos. Most of them were young people, college kids celebrating birthdays, couples doing it together. But then I found one video. A woman, older than me, gray hair, wrinkles around her eyes. She was standing in the door of a plane, and the look on her face. It wasn't excitement. It was terror. Pure, raw terror. And then she jumped. And when she landed, she was crying and laughing at the same time, and she looked alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. I watched that video 12 times. And then I booked my jump. The confirmation email came through at 2 in the morning. Tandem skydive scheduled for Saturday, 9 a.m. Tandem. That meant I'd be strapped to an instructor. Someone else would pull the cord, make sure I didn't die. That felt like cheating. If I was going to do this, I wanted to do it right. I called the company the next morning. Do you offer solo jumps? I asked. The woman on the phone hesitated. We do, but you need to complete a training course first. It's called AFF. Accelerated Free Fall. It takes about a day of ground training, and then you jump solo with 2 instructors beside you. It's more intense. Are you sure? I thought about Richard's letter. About the woman in the video. About the chair by the window. Yes, I said. I'm sure. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. I knew what they'd say. I knew Emma would cry and tell me I was being selfish. I knew Thomas would try to talk me out of it, maybe even call my doctor, suggest I was having some kind of breakdown. So I kept it to myself. My secret. My choice. For the first time in years, I had something that was just mine. And it felt dangerous and wrong and absolutely right. The week before the jump, I could barely function. I kept imagining it. The plane. The door opening. The fall. What if the parachute didn't open? What if I panicked and froze? What if this was the stupidest thing I'd ever done, and everyone was right, and I was just a foolish old woman trying to pretend she wasn't? I almost cancelled it twice. Once on Tuesday, when I woke up with my heart racing so fast I thought I was having a heart attack. And once on Thursday, when Emma called and asked if I wanted to come over for dinner, and I almost broke down and told her everything just so she could talk me out of it. But I didn't. I held on. Barely. The night before the jump, I didn't sleep at all. I sat in Richard's chair and looked out the window at the stars. I thought about all the years we had together. The good ones and the hard ones. The way he used to hold my hand when I was scared. The way he'd look at me and say, "You can do this, Elle. You're stronger than you think." I wanted him there. I wanted him to tell me I wasn't crazy. But he wasn't. And maybe that was the point. Maybe I needed to do this without him. Maybe I needed to prove to myself that I could still be brave when no one was watching. I got to the airfield at 7:30. It was a small place, just a hangar and a runway and a lot of open sky. There were other people there, younger, laughing, taking selfies. I felt out of place. Ancient. Like I'd wandered into the wrong life. A man in a jumpsuit walked over. He was maybe 40, with kind eyes and a beard. "Eleanor?" he asked. I nodded. "I'm Jake. I'll be one of your instructors today. You ready?" I wanted to say no. I wanted to run back to my car and drive home and forget this whole thing. But instead, I said, yes. Let's do this. The training took 4 hours. They taught me how to arch my body, how to check my altitude, how to pull the ripcord, how to steer the parachute, how to land without breaking my legs. They made me practice the movements over and over until they were muscle memory. And the whole time, I kept thinking, this is real. This is actually happening. I'm 72 years old, and I'm learning how to jump out of an airplane. Alone. If the woman I was 5 years ago could see me now, she'd think I'd lost my mind. And maybe I had. But losing my mind felt better than losing myself. By the time we finished training, it was almost noon. My legs were shaking. My stomach was in knots. Jake handed me a jumpsuit and a helmet and a harness with more straps and buckles than I could count. "This is it," he said. "You sure you want to do this?" I looked at him. Really looked at him. And I realized he wasn't asking if I was sure about the jump. He was asking if I was sure about everything. About being here. About choosing this. About still believing I had something left to prove. And I was. I was so damn sure. "Yes," I said. "I'm ready." The plane was smaller than I expected. Cramped. Loud. There were 6 of us going up. 2 tandem jumpers, their instructors, and me with Jake and another instructor named Sarah. We climbed in, and the door closed, and the engine roared, and suddenly we were moving. Faster and faster down the runway, and then up. Up into the sky. And I realized there was no going back. Not now. Not ever. This was happening. I was doing this. And I was absolutely terrified. The higher we climbed, the quieter it got inside my head. I stopped thinking about Emma and Thomas. I stopped thinking about what people would say. I stopped thinking about all the reasons this was a bad idea. I just breathed. In and out. Slow and steady. I looked out the window at the ground below, getting smaller and smaller, and I thought about how different the world looks when you're not standing in it. How big it is. How small I am. How none of it matters unless I decide it does. And I decided. Right then. That this mattered. That I mattered. That I was done being small. At 13,000 feet, Jake tapped my shoulder. "We're here," he said. Sarah opened the door, and the wind hit me like a wall. Cold and loud and violent. I could barely hear anything over the roar of it. One of the tandem jumpers went first, disappearing into the sky like he'd never existed. Then the other. And then it was just me. Jake and Sarah moved beside me, one on each side, holding onto my harness. "Remember," Jake shouted over the wind. "Arch your back. Head up. Arms out. You've got this." I nodded. But I didn't feel like I had anything. I felt like I was about to die. I shuffled to the edge. My feet were hanging out into nothing. Just air. Just sky. Just the ground so far below it didn't look real. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might explode. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me to stop. To climb back inside. To be safe. But I didn't. I looked down at the world, and I thought about Richard's letter. About the woman in the video. About the chair by the window. And I thought, if I don't do this now, I never will. If I don't jump, I'll spend the rest of my life wondering what would have happened if I had. And I couldn't live with that. Not anymore. So I jumped. And I fell. And for 3 seconds, I thought I was going to die. I thought I'd made the worst mistake of my life. I thought this is it, this is how it ends, and no one's even going to understand why I did it. But then something happened. The fear didn't go away. It transformed. It became something else. Something bigger. I wasn't falling. I was flying. The wind was screaming past me, and my body was dropping at 120 miles per hour, and I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything except exist in that moment. And it was the most alive I'd felt in years. Maybe ever. I screamed. Not because I was scared. Because I had to. Because I'd been holding everything in for so long, and suddenly there was no more room for it. I screamed until my throat hurt, and then I laughed, and then I cried, and it all mixed together into something I didn't have words for. Jake and Sarah were beside me, checking on me, making sure I was okay, but I barely noticed them. All I could see was the sky around me and the ground rushing up to meet me, and I thought, this is what it feels like to be free. This is what it feels like to choose yourself. This is what it feels like to live. And then, at 5,000 feet, it was time. I reached for the ripcord. My hand found it. I pulled. And the parachute opened. The harness jerked hard against my body, and suddenly everything stopped. The wind. The speed. The chaos. I was floating. Just floating. Quiet. Peaceful. Drifting through the sky like I weighed nothing. And for the first time in 3 years, I felt it. Peace. Real peace. Not the fake kind where you tell yourself you're fine. But the kind where you actually are. I looked around. The world spread out below me like a painting. Fields and trees and roads and tiny buildings. I could see everything. And I realized something. From up here, my problems looked so small. The worry. The loneliness. The fear of what everyone thought. It all looked like nothing. Because it was nothing. Not compared to this. Not compared to the feeling of being suspended between earth and sky, knowing that I did it. I actually did it. I jumped out of an airplane at 72 years old, alone, and I survived. And more than that, I lived. The landing was harder than I expected. My legs buckled when I hit the ground, and I fell onto my side, the parachute collapsing around me like a blanket. Jake and Sarah were there in seconds, helping me up, checking to make sure I was okay. "How do you feel?" Jake asked. And I didn't know how to answer. How do you describe the feeling of being reborn? How do you explain that you just discovered a version of yourself you didn't know existed? So I just smiled. And I said, "I feel alive." I drove home in a daze. My hands were still shaking. My heart was still racing. I kept replaying it in my mind. The jump. The fall. The moment the parachute opened and everything went quiet. I felt like I'd left a part of myself up there in the sky. The scared part. The small part. The part that believed my life was already over. And I wasn't sure I wanted it back. When I got home, I sat in Richard's chair and cried. Not sad tears. Not even happy tears. Just tears. The kind that come when you've been holding your breath for so long you forgot what it felt like to exhale. I pulled out his letter and read it again. Do something that scares you. Something just for you. Live big. And I realized I'd done it. I'd kept my promise. Not to him. To myself. That night, I called Emma. My hands were shaking as I dialed. I didn't know how she'd react. "Mom," she said when she answered. "Is everything okay?" I took a deep breath. "I need to tell you something," I said. "Today, I jumped out of an airplane. Alone. And I know you're going to think I'm crazy, and maybe I am, but I needed to do it. I needed to prove to myself that I'm still here. That my life isn't over just because Dad's gone. And I'm calling to tell you because I want you to know. I'm okay. Better than okay. I'm actually living again." There was silence on the other end. Long, heavy silence. And then Emma spoke. Her voice was quiet. Shaking. "Mom," she said. "I don't think you're crazy. I think you're the bravest person I know. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I made you feel like you couldn't do this. Like you had to be careful and small and safe. You don't. You never did. I love you. And I'm proud of you." I cried. She cried. And for the first time in years, I felt seen. Not as someone's mother or someone's widow. But as Eleanor. Just Eleanor. A woman who still had dreams. Who still had fight. Who still had life left to live. And I wasn't done yet. Not even close. The next morning, I woke up different. The house didn't feel as empty. The silence didn't feel as heavy. I made coffee and sat by the window, and instead of waiting for something to happen, I started planning. Where I wanted to go next. What I wanted to try. I looked up hiking trails. Scuba diving lessons. Painting classes. All the things I'd told myself were for other people. Younger people. Braver people. But I was brave now. I'd proven that. And I wasn't going to waste another second pretending I wasn't. I'm 72 years old. My knees hurt. My back aches. I take more pills than I can count, and I forget where I put my glasses at least 3 times a day. But yesterday, I jumped out of an airplane at 13,000 feet. Alone. And I'm already planning to do it again. Because I finally understand what Richard was trying to tell me. Life doesn't end when you get old. It doesn't end when the people you love are gone. It only ends when you stop choosing it. And I'm not ready to stop. Not yet. Maybe not ever. So if you're watching this and you're sitting in your own chair by the window, waiting for permission to live, here it is. You don't need anyone's permission. You don't need to be younger or braver or different than you are. You just need to decide. Decide that you matter. That your life matters. That you're not done yet. And then do something about it. It doesn't have to be skydiving. It can be anything. Just something that reminds you that you're still here. Still breathing. Still capable of more than you think. I spent 50 years being careful. Being responsible. Being who everyone needed me to be. And I don't regret that. But I'm done now. Done shrinking. Done waiting. Done letting fear decide what I'm allowed to want. I jumped out of a plane, and I'm still here. And if I can do that, I can do anything. And so can you. Write in the comments if you've ever felt invisible. If you've ever felt like your life was over before you were ready. If you've ever wanted to do something terrifying just to prove to yourself that you still could. I want to hear your story. And if you're not subscribed yet, do it now. Because I'm not stopping here. This is just the beginning. And I want you with me for what comes next. 3 years ago, I thought my story was over. That the best parts of my life were behind me. That all I had left was the slow, quiet fade into nothing. But I was wrong. The best part of my life started the moment I decided I was worth fighting for. The moment I jumped. And I'm never going back to that chair by the window. Not when there's a whole sky out there, waiting. I'm Eleanor. I'm 72 years old. And I just jumped out of a plane. Alone. And I've never felt more like myself in my entire life.